Hey, good morning, FHS, and welcome to a kind of semi-video by Berg. It's actually a voiceover or a PowerPoint, sorry. This isn't going to be quite as entertaining as the previous videos that myself and Mr. Pickens have put together, but actually the information is going to be very important as I'm going to take you through kind of our approaches at FHS to two different types of emergency situations that we may run into. Now, we have practiced this year already, our fire drills, and I'm sure people fully understand how to evacuate the building in case of a fire. And last year and in previous years, we've done our emergency weather drill, which we'll do in the spring. But today I'm going to talk to you about two specific approaches to emergency situations that we haven't talked about yet this year. The two approaches I'm going to share information with you today. One you have some familiarity with, the modified lockdown. Whether you were in middle school last year at Dodge or Bachman or at the high school last year, you did participate in a modified lockdown. And again, we'll spend a little bit of time going over why we would go into a modified lockdown and what that looks like. Our second approach, run, hide, fight, is something that we've talked a little bit about at the high school, but really haven't shared a ton of information or taken people through scenarios. And so I'm going to spend a majority of the video today talking about what run, hide, fight looks like and when we would go into that approach. If you think back to last year when you took part in a modified lockdown, there's not a lot of changes to our typical day except for one big thing. We basically are going to limit the movement of people throughout our building. So if we enter into a modified lockdown, and that's typically when there is something going on outside our building or potentially a medical emergency inside the building, and we will get on the PA system and announce that we are heading into a modified lockdown. When you hear that, you're going to return to the classroom that you have during that hour. If you have a flex learning time or a hybrid or something like that, we'll gather you out of the commons and take you down to the lecture hall. If you're in the media center, you can just stay right there. But basically, we're going to get kids out of the hallways and out of different areas where they're working and get them into classrooms. Once we get people back into the classrooms, teachers are going to go ahead, shut and secure their doors. Once that happens, the interior of the classroom is going to basically continue to do the same. Teachers continue to teach, students continue to work. It's really business as usual inside that classroom, except for we're just going to keep people where they are in those classrooms or in those rooms that they're in. We're not going to let you out to roam around the building and things like that. We want you to stay there through the duration of the lockdown. If by chance you're outside with, say, a PE class or maybe another class is outside the building, we're going to have you come back in and go into another area of the building and just basically keep you there. But the big thing is this. The learning continues as planned. The work that you're doing continues as planned. You're just going to do it inside a room until we release you from that modified lockdown over the PA system. Second type of response that we may have is run, hide, fight. And as I stated previously, this may be fairly new to most of the students in our building. All of our staff have been trained on this over the last year. So if you have questions at any point in time through my semi-video here at the end, feel free to talk to your teachers and they can help you with some of that information. Or, if you walk out of class today and you're not sure about something, stop by the second floor office and talk to any of the administrators. And really, run, hide, fight is our response when there is a threat inside the building. The likelihood is very small that this would ever happen or we would ever need to go into this, but if we had a violent intruder in the building, our response would be run, hide, fight. And this is going to be initiated by a tone. And at the end of this video, we are just going to hit the tone so everybody can hear what that sounds like. Anytime you hear that tone, hopefully you never will, but anytime you hear that tone, we are going to initiate run, hide, fight. The other way that you may be sent into run, hide, fight is by threatening information. And basically the easiest way to describe this is you'll know it when you see it. And again, that's going to be our response to a threat inside the building. And it's really based on our natural instincts as people. Whenever we're in danger, there's kind of three things that people naturally do. They either run, which is that flight instinct. They freeze, which would be to go hide somewhere. Or, in a last case scenario, they would fight and defend themselves. Run, hide, fight is different than the traditional emergency lockdown that you have practiced throughout your years in school. And it's based on a couple of different things. The first of all is that people in harm's way are in the best position to decide what to do. Even though the chances are very high that you're going to be by an adult, if this unlikely situation ever took place, you may not, based on the flexibility that we give students in the building. And so to wait for an adult to direct you what to do is not going to be the safest thing for you. We want to give people that are near those situations the ability to make a decision that's going to keep them the safest and increase their survivability based on the information that they have. We also know that the more options you have to deal with an internal threat is also going to increase your safety and your survivability. And finally, the research shows that noise, distraction, movement, all of those things also increase your safety. So as we talk more about run, hide, fight, you will see that it is different than that traditional lockdown, emergency lockdown that you've practiced previously in your school years where, the tone would go off, teachers would shut their doors, turn off the lights, lock those doors, shut the shades, and you'd basically huddle in the corner and wait for the drill to be over. This is going to be much more dynamic. You may decide to hide and use some of those pieces of a traditional lockdown, but we're going to add some things to increase your safety through that. So over these next 4 or 5 slides, we're going to talk specifics about what the run, hide, and fight parts look like in run, hide, fight. Well, the nice thing about run, hide, fight in our response to an internal threat is those 3 terms tell you exactly what your options are. If you think back again to that traditional emergency lockdown drill that you used to do, where you were in a room, basically on the floor, huddled against the wall, very, very passive approach, basically waiting out that situation. We want to be much more proactive when we have that ability. So the first option of run, hide, fight is just that, run. It is by far the most active approach. Now, to effectively use the run part of run, hide, fight, there's some things that you do have to know and be aware of. So one of the big things with run, hide, fight is just your awareness of around the building. So as you move from room to room, or you kind of take the different paths you do from class to class, start to familiarize yourself with, okay, where's the exit out of this room? Are there 2 exits out of this room? If I had to evacuate the building right now on my way to second hour, how many different opportunities do I have to exit the building? Is there just one way? Is there multiple ways? What would be the fastest way? If I was in the cafeteria during lunch or before school, how many different exits from that area? How many people know that there are multiple exits out of the media center? So again, to really be able to implement run, hide, fight, you need to familiarize yourself with the different areas of the building that you may be in throughout the day. And that changes from time to time. We understand that your schedule may change from first trimester to second trimester, but again, we really want you to familiarize yourself where you are. So if in the event that we did have a violent intruder in the building and we initiated through our tones run, hide, fight, and you decided to run, you would have the opportunities to know how to get out of that area as fast as you can. Like I said before, run is just that. It is get out of the building. If you think about it, much like a fire drill, if there was a fire in the building, we'd want to get out of the building. Just like if we had an internal threat, we would want you to get out of the building. And again, think about how the building is designed. Again, as I stated before, it's very unlikely we would ever have to initiate this in our building. But if we did, the way our building's designed, a majority of students would be able to easily get out of this building in a very short amount of time. So again, as you go from class to class and place to place, make sure you familiarize yourself so that if you had to, you could evacuate the building rather quickly. Once you leave the building, we do want to get people together so we can begin to account for students and things like that. So we've identified 3 rallying points at Farmington High School. One would be the east end of the property by Flagstaff, so by the sign when you drive in and come into our parking lot. The second would be the west parking lot, which would be by the home side of the football bleachers where our sophomores park. And then some of our juniors and seniors that didn't get their passes in time, they also park out there. But for the most part, our sophomores park out there. And then again, if we spill into that Spyglass neighborhood, there's a park at Spyglass. So again, if we did have to initiate run, hide, fight in the very unlikely chance that we would, and you do exit the building, we would ask you to go one of those 3 rallying points. And for those of you that are visual learners, here we go, a little Google Maps for you using technology to make things easier, but the stars identify our 3 rallying points. The second part of run, hide, fight is hide. And hiding is is somewhat similar to the traditional emergency lockdown that you did in the past, except for some enhancements. And one of the biggest things that we want to do if you decide to hide is to hide in a place that is barricadable. Now, I'm not sure if barricadable is a word, but you just don't want to be in a spot that could be easily entered by an intruder. You want to be in a spot that you can barricade the door and make it difficult for somebody to get into that room. So this picture gives you a pretty good indication of what barricading would look like. So some of the traditional spots that students may think would be good hiding spots, if you can't barricade it and make it difficult for somebody to get in that room, that's not a good spot to hide in. The other changes to that traditional emergency lockdown that you practiced in the past from barricading that door, we'd also want you to spread out and stand in the room. We want to make it difficult for anybody to do harm to students in that room, and by spreading out, that makes it much more difficult if somebody was to breach that room. We don't want you huddled in the corner on the floor. We want you to be ready to take action if you need to, or potentially leave that room if you need to. Consider all the exits. Now, some rooms have multiple exits, and if need be, you would have to barricade all of those exits. We do have some first floor classrooms that have windows. Those would be considered secondary exits if you needed to get out of there. If by some chance the intruder breached your room, you can run if you need to and get out, and you can defend yourself if needed as well. Once a lockdown is initiated, that emergency lockdown, run, hide, fight is initiated, and you decide to barricade, this is the hardest part. You do not let anybody else enter that room. So the only way that somebody's going to come in that room would be our police force, and they would have a key to get in that room. Now, this is also different than the traditional emergency lockdown that you practiced in the past. If you get information that says that you could make the decision to leave, you can unbarricade and leave the building if that's what you decide to do. So if you barricade, you're not just there until that situation is over. If you get information that says that it's clear down your hallway or clear where you're at, and you feel like you can leave, you can go ahead and unbarricade and leave that. So when we start talking about run, hide, and fight, the key is this. It is not a linear progression. It is based on the information you have, you can decide to do any one of those three, and you can go from hide to run to hide to fight based on the information that you have. So don't think of it, you have to hide and then fight, or run, hide, then fight. They can be, any three of those combinations can be done at any point in time based on the information that you have. So the fight part of run, hide, fight can cause a little concern for people. So I want to just clarify a few things. Again, the idea of fighting is more about defending yourself than really running around trying to chase and find that threat or find that intruder. We're not asking anybody to do that. As a matter of fact, we don't want you to do that. The idea of defending yourself and the fight part of it is really a last resort when you have no other choices. And it's a personal choice. If you don't feel like that's something that you can do or want to do, you can always initiate one of the other two, the run and hide part of that. But the reality is that we would really want to look at using the fight option or defending yourself if there is no other option. And again, a scenario might be where there's a threat inside the building and you decide to hide and barricade in a room, and that room was breached, and you have no other choice but to defend yourself. And the thought is that you're not just going over and attacking that person, but you can use anything around you to defend yourself. And again, this becomes the matter of familiarizing yourself with your surroundings. So again, if you're in a classroom right now, take a look at around your room and think about, okay, if we needed to barricade this, how would we barricade this? If we had to defend ourselves in here, what would we do to defend ourselves? What different things do we have at our disposal to do that? So again, just to be prepared that if need be and there's no other choice, how would I defend myself in this scenario? As I talked about at the beginning of run, hide, fight, how are you going to be aware that we are going to initiate run, hide, fight? Well, the first one would be the emergency lockdown alarm, which I said earlier will we'll use just at the end of this, just so people know what that sounds like. But another potential way is just the sounds of panic, loud noises, different types of sounds that are unfamiliar to you. That may initiate run, hide, or fight based on where you are and the information that you have. We don't use any commands or codes in the building. If we need to go into this, we'll use plain English. We'll tell people what to do as best we can and share as much information as we can, but you don't have to worry about learning any secret codes or anything like that if we did have to initiate run, hide, or fight. We will try to provide as much information as possible to people, but again, if you become aware of information or things happen, again, try to share that information, because the more information people have, the better decisions that they can make in terms of whether they're going to run, hide, or fight in these situations. Again, information is power, and so the more information that people have, the better off they're going to be able in terms of making decisions for their own safeties. Communicate by any means as possible. We do know that if this situation was to ever happen, which the probability is pretty low, we would initiate run, hide, or fight, that our cell phones are probably going to be useless. The cell towers are going to get inundated with calls and texts and things like that. So, but there are other means to communicate throughout the building. So any means that we can communicate information, we want to do that. And if you have the ability to, and you're in a classroom and something happens, contact 911 as soon as possible. So this little video / voiceover gives you an overview of our two emergency responses. The modified lockdown, which again is going to be basically school goes on as normal. We're going to keep kids in classrooms. The activities in classrooms are going to go on as normal. We're just going to keep and limit the movement around the building. That's initiated via the PA system, and when we're done with it, we'll get on the PA system and end it. Run, hide, fight is our response when there is a threat inside the building, a violent intruder inside that building. And again, we want people to be able to take the information they have and act upon it to keep themselves as safe as possible. So, based on the information you have, based on where you are, you can decide to run, hide, or fight, or any combination of those as you get more information. But here's what we do know about school safety. Even though talking about internal threats, violent intruders is kind of scary stuff, we do know that our schools are still the safest place for kids. All the research over the last 10 years indicates that fewer children suffer injuries while at school and in school activities than they do anywhere in our lives. So again, we do need to be prepared in case this ever happens, but we know that it's very, very unlikely that we would need to activate run, hide, or fight. So at this time, in the next 3 or 4 minutes, we'll play the lockdown tone. You don't need to do anything. You just need to listen to the tone. So if you do hear that, you do know what to do. That does initiate a run, hide, or fight. And then we'll have our teachers talk to you about just some scenarios of maybe what to do if this situation occurred, how you'd react based on this classroom, what it would look like if you needed to barricade that classroom, what would be the quickest exit from where you are at this point in time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those to your teachers. And then again, if you need more information and want to talk to administrators, feel free to do that as well.